I was just checking some of the social media posts, and Mayor Eric Adams did post on X on his verified account, and it was posted less than a minute ago, and he writes, the NYPD is continuing to investigate the shooting incident in Midtown this evening that tragically struck down a police officer and injured a civilian. We extend the deepest sympathies to the officer's family and urge New Yorkers to avoid East 52nd Street between Park and Lexington Avenues. There's still much to be done in my administration's efforts to eradicate violent crime. The dedication displayed this evening by New York's finest is certain to get us there.
We want to bring in former NYPD sergeant and adjunct professor at John Jay College of Criminal Justice, Philippe Rodriguez. And Philippe, from what you're seeing right now, what would you say that the NYPD and all the investigative agencies are doing right at this moment? What are they trying to find out?
At this point, remember, the most important thing is let's find out who this person is. All right. There seems to be a great deal of concern with that vehicle. As you can see, they were processing it. And what we have here is multi-layered, multi-agency response. We have K9 out there. So what NYPD is doing is working at 100 miles an hour to try to identify this person, see if there's any co-conspirators or anything else or any immediate threats that we should be aware. You can see the individual. I was able to get a picture of him. He walked into that building very nonchalantly. And, you know, it's almost like the way he was strutting in there, it was almost like he was on a mission. As we know, he did have a long gun, which is once again, that poor officer that had to engage them was already outgunned from the beginning. Because you got to remember the type of ammunition that comes out of these, long rifles, be it a 7.62 or 223. These are high velocity rounds, and they do inflict maximum damage. This poor officer had to basically, had to shoot out, and he was already outnumbered to begin with.
We can only imagine that Philippe, he may have been wearing some gear himself to protect himself, correct?
Yeah, it does. We have our standard, 3A, what you call level vest. But once we start talking about this type of ammunition, the velocity is, I'm a firearms instructor, and the velocity and what I've seen and the type of damage that this does to the human body makes it very difficult for people to survive with this type of firearm,
And when you're looking at this now, we see what appears to be video from earlier. We see police officers running around. So this would be video from earlier, perhaps right about when it happened. Christina and I were talking about the use of cameras. It's probably pretty likely that these cameras had already traced the fact that he went in the building and likely didn't come out. Does it happen that quickly in real time?
I mean, we do have the Retail Crime Center. That was one of the things that was a couple of years back. It was started. It is state of the art. You'll be amazed how many cameras we have actually out there that are able to, at the speed of light, bring information not only to the officers, themselves in that office. With the NYPD cell phones that every officer is issued, it's almost an instantaneous level, the way this information can be disseminated in a matter of seconds. So you know what? It does give sometimes a great tactical advantage. And at least when these officers were responding, they saw the type of weapon he had, and they knew that, it was a real, active shooter, imminent threat situation.
Well, Philippe, we're learning some new information. Perhaps you can comment on it. We understand that the suspect entered with, as you pointed out, an AR-style rifle, a long gun, and went to the 33rd floor and opened fire. And that's where also the two NYPD officers who were working in a security capacity were hit. So we know, it appears at least, Philippe, that he knew where he was targeting. He would, if he went to the 34th floor.
Yeah, he didn't engage anyone else, as you can see, so he kind of knew what he was going to do from the beginning. So possibly an ex-employee at this time. And the most important thing is, we need to ID him because we need to find the motive. The motive is key to everything. We don't know if this is a lone wolf attack, if it's something that's, coming from some sort of Middle East threat or anything like that at this point. So the key thing is, we need to ID him. We need to make sure that those, and you can see how they're processing the scene. They are concerned about improvised explosive devices. That's why they took that measure of being able to harness that type of hook on that vehicle, not physically opening it out themselves, their officers. So there is concern. After we identify this individual, hopefully either through cell phone records, because it also becomes a forensic investigation where we have to look at, cell phone and where he's been and everything else. We want to get to his residence. We want to do a search warrant and get as much information as we can.
We're looking at a security camera footage, a still photo that was taken from that of the suspected shooter. He is dressed in plain clothes. Yeah. He has a blazer on. He has a button-up shirt on, sneakers, and then you see the long gun. This is before he enters the building. He's clearly on his way to go through those revolving doors. But let's concentrate again. I think that it's really important to make this point that the shooting, he went up to the 33rd floor. Right. So clearly
he knew exactly where he wanted to go.
He knew where he wanted to go. Mm-hmm. Please elaborate on that.
Correct. Like I said, I could tell the mannerism he was walking from the video and the still photos, and you see that extended magazine. You have a person there that's minimum. And I'm just saying, of course, from the angle and everything else, that's a minimum 30-round magazine. So if you think about it, you know what? This is the type of ammunition and the type of weapon that we get people to actually engage in combat. So he went up there. He knew what he was doing. He hit only one specific floor. And I'm amazed that, he was still willing to do it. Because if he had any sort of intelligence beforehand, it's usually the same officers work the same details, or they constantly have NYPD working in an off-duty capacity, and that he was willing to engage with them like that. It shows, that's just brazen. And that's something you don't see every day.
And talk about brazen and talk about something you don't see every day. This man walking in, apparently when he got out of his vehicle, he must have taken that long gun out of maybe a bag or something. But look at him just brazenly strolling through. Now, I don't know whether people just ran away already, because usually there are people in a courtyard there. But he's walking through like he's just carrying a bag of, a suitcase or something, as if nobody would notice that gun. Or maybe they would, and they'd get the heck out of there as fast as they could, as it appears that they did.
You would think that there's security once you enter this building. Is that a long shot, Philippe? I mean, is that fair to say that there is some sort of security when you enter this building? It's a very prominent building in Midtown.
Correct. I mean, it depends. I can't really, I don't have the information. It has to do, it could have been private security that were unarmed. And at this point, think about it. If you have officers that are fully, trained and armed in the way we prepare our officers, and they had a, difficult time, and look at the results of what happened. We lost one of our own today. And, it's just the fact that the officers didn't really have a chance to wear our guns. Unless they were able to get some information from that private security. Remember, the building is just so vast, so many floors. How many people could you alert at once? You know what kind of public address system? Did they have some sort of code that they could have put over the PA system, or an emergency text or something? There's a lot of different companies that have all the stuff that can send you an immediate, active shooter notification to your phone via email, text. We just don't know the capacities or what kind of equipment they had in that building.
And one more thing, Philippe, I noticed that, as Christine points out, this guy is wearing basically a polo shirt or a long sleeve shirt and a jacket over it. He doesn't appear to be wearing any gear himself, which we frequently see in these shooting situations. Does that tell us anything about the suspect?
It just usually, one thing is, when I see that type of firearm, I see the way he's walking, the way he's dressed. He's looking to blend in, but at the end of the day, you know what? He wasn't afraid to die. Ballistic vests are easy to purchase. You got used stuff out there with these heavy-duty ceramic plates that stops all this, high-powered firearms. It's easy, something easy to buy. The same way he had that large-capacity magazine in that gun, and it's out there.
Philippe, we're finally able to air some video immediately after the chaos broke out after this shooting. We're always extra careful before we air any video here at CBS New York until we can get it verified, and also obviously this picture. But we're looking at some of the video of just how chaotic the response was because of this clear and present danger of what was known at that time as a man with a long gun who had already shot an officer and some civilians. We see police arriving. We see them jumping over garden islands, some of them, clearly approaching with caution, as if somebody could open fire at any moment. And you can certainly just tell from these pictures what a tense scene this was when they approached. Please tell us about, what is going through these officers' minds that are clearly running right into danger and not thinking twice.
Well, I can tell you from 31 years of experience, once, the call comes out, officer down to 1013, I mean, your mindset goes into automatic response mode. The most important thing for you at that time is to get there, to make sure your officer is safe, and respond by any means necessary. There's times that I've jumped onto the back of an ambulance and held on when an officer was calling for help. And it's just the most important thing as a cop, to be there for one another. And you know what? You really want to save everybody else also, because that's part of our job. But when an officer goes down, your mindset goes different. It's automatic fight no matter what, and you got to get there. So, I feel for these poor officers that, in this trauma that they're going to have to live with. Those voices never leave your head.
Yeah, I was going to say, first of all, we did see Mayor Adams on the scene where he is likely being briefed at this hour. But, Philippe, as former NYPD yourself, you know the phrase, you're always on the job. These two officers were working in a security capacity, so outside of the job, but on the job. And that feeling has to be going through everybody who is a former officer, who is an officer who may not be on duty, that at any single moment, something awful like this could happen, correct?
It does, but you put it in the back of your mind that every day you still go out there and answer those huge amount of radio calls that keep coming in, and you do your best to serve the public. But you know what? At the end of the day, these officers have responded. It is trauma. It's hard. But at the end of the day, you put that, the shield back on, you put your vest back on, and you go out and do your job. And we've been doing it for years.
Philippe, how difficult is it, though, to hear the news that you lost one of your brothers and then continue to have to concentrate on the task at hand, to secure evidence, to ensure safety, and to make sure that no stone goes unturned?
It's difficult because, you still have that in the back of your mind. You still have to secure this crime scene. You still have to do a lot of different things, There's a lot that goes on with securing such a massive crime scene. You got to make sure you get every little bit of evidence, because you never know. What if there was someone out there who's actually assisting this individual? You want him brought to justice. Where did he get this gun from? That's going to be another situation where we have to call in ATF, do a gun trace. And that becomes the cornerstone sometimes for the investigation of how we trace these firearms and how we actually arrest additional individuals.
And how frightening is it, the way you describe the power of those rounds that come out of that weapon, how even if perhaps you have a big vest on, at close range, there may be no stopping it. And we know at least one officer tonight lost his life tragically. Felipe Rodriguez, thank you so much for all this information. Former NYPD officer and adjunct professor at John Jay College. Thanks for your expertise.